our last 28 years. Today we had some very, very exciting news. This is why we're here. All right, during the pandemic, we served over 5,000 people. We never shut our doors, okay? And I happen to have my new executive director here, and I said I was going to pump her up a little bit. It's because of her that we stayed open. Okay, so where are you? Francesca, Yellico, where is she? There's a bright light here, okay? And this morning, with the help of another friend of mine, Pam Manera here, they saved a baby's life. Okay? This young lady found us on Google Maps, which I was so excited to hear. She called because she said every place she goes for help, everybody wants to have give her an abortion. Planned Parenthood, you know, it's funded by our government, and they quoted themselves as essential. Wanted to give her an abortion. She's 22, she's young, she's in this country for only a year.
Wow.
But she found hope with us. And after 2 hours at 8 o'clock this morning, she decided that she was going to let this baby live. And with the help of another center, the New Beginnings Center, Alicia Jones has spoken here by speaker. She's going to have a sonogram on Saturday morning. Okay, so please support our work. We do wonderful, wonderful work. We can't have our dinner this year, but we're going to have a virtual baby bottle campaign, and you can always donate to me. I will take everybody's money. Thank you. And we need to get pro-life Republicans in office, because this city council is awful. Our governor is awful. He wants to have abortions to the 9th month. We just don't want that to happen.
No, up until birth.
Okay, you have no idea the work that goes into Bridge to Life. You absolutely have no idea. These women give women hope. And I had the pleasure of going down to the March for Life down in D.C. as a guest of Dawn Eskew and Kathy Donahoe. We had the most fantastic time. And once again, the president supports life. And that's what we're all about. Also, another branch of the Republican Party. I want to take a moment. Before I introduce you to Curtis, I'd like to tell anybody here who's from Long Island, I have a candidate, Dave Franklin. Dave, can you stand up, please? There you go. He's running for the New York State Senate. If you live in Great Neck, New Hyde Park, Joanne and Bobby, Garden City, he's running, and many other areas, look it up. He's running against Anna Kaplan. Now, we all know what happened, okay? We all know what happened to the New York State Senate when I ran 2 years ago. We only had it by 1 seat. We were down by 8. Wow. Everybody needs to get out and vote. 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 Get that New York State Senate back. Vote red. Taking back the Assembly is going to be a different story. There's 150 seats in the New York State Assembly, of which we only have 47. Just the same, vote red. Yep. Now, without further ado, I'd like you all to meet our one and only New York City historical landmark. He's my age, so it's okay for me to say that. The one and only, the fighter. The one who stands up, who won't be anybody's puppet, no one, not ever. He's a fighter. You've seen him fight for the last 43 years. He's taken 7 bullets. His insides are just about ripped apart. Do we want a mayor who loves this city? Do we want a mayor who's going to respect the people of this city the way he's done for the last 43 years? Do we want a mayor that can actually win this election? He is a newly minted Republican. If we wait for our establishment Republicans to put up some wimp, we will fight that wimp, we will beat that wimp, and we will make Curtis Sliwa our Republican candidate for New York City mayor. Take back our streets. Take back our city. Curtis Sliwa, come on up.
Ronnie's the home team. They're thinking of actually tearing down the statue in Philadelphia in front of the museum.
Wow.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I want to thank Vicky for inviting me tonight. And having seen you in video, I'm sorry I couldn't be there. But protecting the Theodore Roosevelt statue in front of the museum in Manchester. Right, Theodore Roosevelt, reformer. Theodore Roosevelt, who would have welcomed being on the Hill today, looking in the eyes. The trust buster, who would have loved taking on Bezos and Zuckerberg and the rest of them. And Theodore Roosevelt, who was the first police commissioner of New York City. A lot of people don't realize that.
Wow.
And that's one of the reasons that Black Lives Matter and Antifa want that statue down, because he represented the time where he consolidated all the watchmen that were spread throughout our city and said, no, we need an organized police force, because he walked the streets with a guy named Jacob Reese when he became police commissioner, and he saw what the watchmen were doing. Now, you remember Jacob Reese. He was the one who was the photographer who pointed out how the poor and impoverished on the Lower East Side were living, mostly Jews at that time. And because of his photo display, things were done to undo the ghetto that existed down there. And Teddy Roosevelt learned from that experience and incorporated that into the NYPD. They don't spend enough time talking about Teddy Roosevelt. In fact, let's face it, we don't spend enough time talking about the NYPD. I'm like, you know, before the pandemic, the NYPD, they were the heroes, right? You know, how many of them were sick? How many of them? No, you know, no. No way, they're essential workers. No. John Stewart, remember, went to the Hill, did a magnificent job for the survivors and those who had gotten so seriously ill. Afterwards, all of a sudden, Black Lives Matter. John Stewart, what police? I have no idea what you're talking about. They have sudden amnesia. They turn on their own friends. And I've seen this again and again and again. But let me give you some historical significance. Because the candidate I am is a lot different than your traditional candidates, either Democrats or Republicans. You cut my veins and arteries, I bleed New York City. I love the rendition that you had of God Bless America today. I was a tried and true Yankee fan. I hated the Mets, and I still hate the Mets. But I remember, and I even confronted my kumbare Cheech earlier today, Rudy Giuliani, because he comes on after me on the radio, and he was in the studio today. And I said, you know, your deputy mayor, Randy Levine, who's now vice president of operations for the New York Yankees, he was the first one of the cancel culture. Remember, every seventh inning stretch, after 9/11, when Steinbrenner was alive, he said, I want the Kate Smith rendition every seventh inning stretch. You remember that?
I remember that.
Nobody complained about that. There were no marches, there were no petition drives, and then all of a sudden, no more Kate Smith, God Bless America.
It's racist.
And we said nothing, right? Nobody protested. Nobody said, hey, I'm canceling my season tickets that cost me a reverse mortgage in order to go to 161st River Avenue. Then we saw them take down Kate Smith's statue in front of the Philadelphia Spectrum. Nobody explained that. They said, oh, she's racist. And I said to myself, you know, isn't this odd that this great patriotic figure, a woman who raised so much money in U.S. war bonds to support our effort against the Japanese and the Nazis, is now all of a sudden being put in storage? And do you know the only place that continues to honor Kate Smith is Wildwood, New Jersey. Every morning when they raise the flag there, they play the Kate Smith rendition. So I want to salute you, Vicki, for making sure that we had God Bless America, because when I heard that, I thought of Kate Smith. We cannot forget. Remember, now they're coming after everybody. We said nothing when they came after Kate Smith. Yeah, you know, she's older. Maybe they're having a young, hip happening. No. It was no more God Bless America, period. And now you see what's transpired. And look at our city, our beautiful New York City. We knew that Comrade de Blasio, the part-time mayor, the dope from Park Slope, who loves to smoke those fatties at night, that Maui Wowie and Hindu Kush with his wife on the back porch of Gracie Mansion, we knew he was in a drug-induced psychosis. But it became most apparent to me when all of a sudden, in the midst of all this mishigash, he's on the Brian Lair show, and he's quoting Marx and Engels and Das Kapital. Quoting it from memory. And I said, of course, here's a guy who went on his honeymoon behind the sugarcane curtain of Fidel and Raul Castro to Havana. Here's a guy who went and kissed the pinky ring of Daniel Ortega, who's still there, I might add, a dictator, in Nicaragua supporting the Sandinistas against Ronald Reagan's support of the Contras. Of course, he's a hardcore communist, but people say, people change.
No.
That was Comrade de Blasio when he was younger. He's become more mainstream. And so I decided, for a number of reasons, to grow a beard. Because with a red beret, they think Hugo Chavez. So my opposition immediately thinks, oh, he's one of us. And then if you look at me from a certain angle with this beard, I look a little bit like Karl Marx, don't I? So when I'm battling all the acolytes of AOC all-out crazy, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Jumani, the cop-hating Williams, when they look at me initially, they don't know necessarily how to figure me out. Because I'm in the streets just like them. They've got no more street cred than Curtis Lee, and so they can't frighten me out, they can't chase me out, they can't harass me out. What are they going to do? Kill me? Haven't enough people tried to do that already? And it's interesting, some of you came up to me as I was sitting in the back there, and you said, oh, I just saw you, in Fear City, New York versus the mob, Netflix. And there you were talking about when you were a kid taking on the Lucchese's and the Gambinos. Yeah. Because I grew up in Canarsie, and that's all you had. Lucchese's on one side, Gambinos on the other side. And you either folded like a cheap camera, and you wimped away, or you stood up to them and you fought for what you knew was right. And I started doing it as a little kid. And I've taken many lickings and always come back ticking. And the reason I did it is because organized crime, look what they did to our city. It took somebody like my kumbari chief, Rudy Giuliani, to give the city a desperately needed colonic. Not just to save the streets from the inept David Dinkins, who happens to be the mentor for Comrade de Blasio, but a man who took on the 5 heads of organized crime, the Gambinos, Genovese, Lucchese's, Colombos, Bananos, unheard of, unprecedented. Being an Italian-American, it earned him the disgrazia of 10% of the Italian Americans who would never elect him, never voted for him, even though he was running against David Dinkins, who was destroying our city single-handedly at the time. 10% of the Italian Americans would never vote for Rudy Giuliani. Luckily, enough people decided to come out to vote the second time around against David Dinkins. And a lot of people think, oh, it's all those Staten Island folks, they wanted us to see. You couldn't have been more hopelessly wrong. When you actually look at the vote tallies, when you actually crunch the numbers, the reason that David Dinkins was not reelected, because he was ahead at a certain point at night. The figures came back from Southeast Queens, predominantly black, predominantly middle class, and they didn't come out to vote for the African-American first mayor of New York City, David Dinkins. Not to say they came out to vote for Rudy Giuliani. No, they didn't hold their nose and pull the lever. They just sat on their tuchus and didn't vote. Thank God they didn't. We ended up with Rudy Giuliani, who saved our city from the abyss. And as you know, it was a long, hard fight, and I certainly participated in that long, hard fight, doing it from a citizen's vantage point and seeing others in their own capacities fighting for this city, getting us to a point where we could be proud of New York City, where we were the safest city in America, safest big city in the world. Unfathomable. And then you had 8 years of Michael Bloomberg, who then bribed his way into an extra 4 years to make 12 years. I don't know where that guy was. Whoever he could wine, dine, and pocket line, that's where Michael Bloomberg was. He didn't have the soul of a Rudy Giuliani, but he did a relatively good job. And then the people decided, hey, we need a change. Let's bring in Comrade Bill de Blasio. And what a nightmare it has been. Look at all the homeless people roaming the streets. Look at all the emotionally disturbed, like zombies in Dawn of the Dead. They're everywhere. And so his solution to the problem, instead of giving the emotionally disturbed people care, and we're not gonna forgive Andrew Evil Eyes Cuomo, King Cuomo II, the son of Mario Faccia Bruta Cuomo, King Cuomo I. May I give Andrew his salute. Andrew, ascendeme, tus you provinos facim, and like your father Mario, you are. When through nepotism he became our governor, there were 30,000 beds. 30,000 beds in the mental health system throughout New York State. You know how many beds there are now? 3,000.
Wow.
3,000. We have 3,000 people just roaming the streets of the Bronx on any given day who are emotionally disturbed, or Manhattan, or Brooklyn, or Queens, or Staten Island. To these, what we have done to these people, we have forsaken them. And then the homeless. De Blasio couldn't manage that problem. Remember, he was in constant denial. He said, no. We got it in check. No. We had a severe homelessness. No. It's an aberration. Finally, he understood how severe the problem was. So he decided he was going to take 90 shelters and shove them down your throats and destroy the neighborhoods that had somehow been able to avoid the problem of having single, able-bodied, homeless men roaming their streets, who have emotional issues, who have alcohol, drug issues, some of them who are sex offenders, and serious felons who have just been released from Rikers Island, where everybody gets released now because of no bail, or from state incarcerated facilities. And you say to yourself, and how did that work out with the 90 shelters, huh? How did that work out? They're still in the streets. We have 14,000 homeless men now that we pay $250 a night to put up into 5-star top-shelf hotels because, obviously, of the pandemic, they have no clients. They've all contributed to Comrade de Blasio, who's a real capitalist when it comes to collecting the moolah shmoolah and the ducats from his friends. So he's made deals to lease the hotels, $250 a night. And they don't even stay in the hotels. They roam the streets, they break in, they cause all kinds of mayhem and chaos. This is a recipe for disaster. So number one, let's deal with the reality of what he's going to leave us with in 15 months. Thank God in 15 months he's term limited. He can now go out and join the Painters Union because he's become so proficient in painting Black Lives Matter logos all throughout the city of New York. Side note on that, remember like 2 weeks ago, he painted Black Lives Matter in front of Trump Tower, and standing next to him was his wife. You know, the authoress of the Thrive non-existent program that has stolen $1.25 billion from us, the sucker taxpayers. And I've never yet run into them in the streets, and I'm dealing with the emotionally disturbed and homeless people all the time. Never once saw a Thrive worker. I've seen other outreach workers. Never once a Thrive worker. I don't think they exist. I don't think they... And are there any Democrats who are using their prosecutorial powers? Are there any of them who are calling them to task to say, hey, we want to see how every nickel, dime, and penny is spent? No, because obviously they made a deal. Eric Adams, oh, I was a cop, but I love to stick a shiv in the back of every cop that I ever meet. And I'm telling citizens, you know, somebody's blasting fireworks outside of your house. And they're actually having wars like ISIS versus Al-Qaeda with Roman candles. Don't call the police, 911. Don't call 311. Go out there and deal with it yourself. And a woman said, oh, that's my borough president, Eric Adams. He's such a nice guy. I'm going to do exactly that. And she was living in the pink houses that we used to call the stink houses next to the Times Square stores when I was running through the neighborhood off of Linden Boulevard. And she went down and she approached the thugs and she said, young men, please, we need to get some sleep. We've got to go to work tomorrow night. Could you please stop firing the fireworks? So what did the thugs tell her? F-U-B. And then one guy went back to his crib, got a 9mm, and shot it 8 times in the head. 8 times in the head in front of everybody. There were hundreds of people out there. Have they made an arrest yet? Does anybody know if they made an arrest? No. See, people had window shades on there. What shots? It must have been fireworks. Because the code of the streets now, because we've made our cops impotent, is snitches get stitches and end up in ditches. And there was Eric Adams, right? What kind of advice is that? What an idiot. And then there was Corey Johnson, right? Speaker of the city council, saying, you know, I'm going to take my my little stiletto here, and I'm going to cut off the culions, the huevos of the police department. I'm going to render them impotent. I'm going to take away every opportunity they have to protect the people of New York. Because I want social workers to go out there and interact with armed thugs, gangbangers, Bloods and Crips, MS-13, 18th Street. Are you freaking out of your mind, Corey Johnson? Oh, by the way, when's the last time you saw Corey Johnson in the streets? My corner mine. And then there's the Mashad, the Mameluke. Scott Stringer, perpetually running for any office that he can get his tentacles on. And he's broken so far to the left, he wants AOC. He basically to kiss her on her tuchus to get her signature endorsement so he can run for mayor. And here's the guy again. When do you ever see him in the streets? So I would say this, and let's get down to the basics of what would make me a different kind of a candidate. Number one, you say you want to defund the police. Hey, schmucks, putz, schmendricks, pishers, there's no freaking money. Everything is going to be defunded. Everything. Education, fire, social workers, every support system that the city of New York that we pay for is going to be defunded. There's no money. Do you think Donald Trump, after getting smacked around like a human piñata, is going to give excess amounts of money to bail out the hopelessly inept and corrupt de Blasio administration?
No.
Any of you want that to happen?
No.
Of course not. So we're going to have to do more with less. Oh, you say that as a lot more with less. Well, why don't we just print money, at the Federal Reserve? Yeah, and pretty soon I'll be looking like Hugo Chavez from Venezuela because the currency will be worthless. We can't keep doing this. And then you have Andrew Evil Eyes Cuomo. He's got a $20 billion hole in his state budget that existed before the pandemic. And remember, every day, coffee with Cuomo, right? We need money, we need moolah shmoolah scatter. Hey, and then he sticks the shiv in Trump's back each and every day. Yeah. You think Trump is going to give him money to bail himself out from his fiscal improprieties that had nothing to do with the pandemic? Of course not.
No.
So we have to learn how to do more with less. Now, who knows how to do more with less?
New Yorkers.
I'm Curtis Lewa. I throw nickels around like manhole covers because I ain't got no money. As you know, certain mistakes I've made in my life have led me into family court, and they get 80% of everything I make. 80%. So I know what it's like. I live in an apartment in the West Side. 310 square feet. With my wife, Nancy. The best decision I ever made was to marry Nancy, not the other four. And I had 12 rescue cats, because one of the campaign missions of mine is no kill shelters. We're never again going to kill a cat or a dog in a shelter in New York and pay for the execution. They're held 72 hours. Do you realize? 72 hours. They post them and say, no, don't kill them. I'll rescue them. No, sorry, they're dead. Nothing you can do. It's like a scene out of Goodfellas. We can't be doing this.
Right. It's horrible.
The way we treat our pets is the way we treat our people.
That's right.
And then if you remember recently, you talked about me fighting, Vicky. I was walking along 34th and Herald Square on my way to WABC, that time on the west side. And I saw them basically raiding Home Depot. Not the looters, it was Macy's. Macy's Herald was putting all the plywood on their outside window cases all around the store. And I said, what does Macy's Herald know that we don't know? They knew they were going to get looted. And if you notice, the retailers were buying up plywood like there was no tomorrow because they knew that the mob was going to come out, the thugs, and they were going to loot the city. And remember how they poured into Macy's Herald by the hundreds? Where were the police? The police watched. When I talked to police officers, I said, why didn't you do anything? We were told, stand down. Who told you that? Comrade de Blasio and his lapdog police commissioner, Dermot Shea. So imagine if you were a looter and you're going in, and this is like Powerball for you. You're going into Macy's, you're able to grab stuff. Most kids are not going to use that stuff, but you bring it home to mama, and mama says, oh, you're such a good son, you're such a good daughter. And there were no ramifications, no arrests, no cops. So they came out a second night. And this time, like locusts to a cornfield, they were aiming for Soho because that's where all the trendoids go, freakazoids and jet setters. And I knew it. I could feel it in the marrow of my bones. And I knew the cops were going to stand down again. And I told the guardian angels, we're going in and we're fighting them. And we're going to fight them, and we're not going to surrender, and we're not going to retreat. And for about 8 hours, it was non-stop battles in the streets. I got my jaw fractured for like the umpteenth time. Other guardian angels were seriously injured, but there were no police around. So you see the difference between the bureaucrats, the difference between the elected officials, the difference between real sons and daughters of the city is when we see neighborhoods in distress, when we see they're coming for property first. We know then they're going to come for the product, which they looted. And history tells us, if you're a student of history, if you don't protect the property, if you don't protect the product, who do they come after next? The people. The people. You. One of your speakers said they're going to come for you. And they will. And why wouldn't they? Think of it. They're not getting arrested. Occasionally, when they do get arrested, they get taken to the local precinct. They're given a disappearance ticket, desk appearance ticket, and they're out. There's no bail. So there's no thought of being sent to Rikers Island. They're footloose and fancy free. And they march down the streets, and this is their chant. Whose streets? Our streets. Do they pay taxes? Have they raised families in these streets? Have they put every nickel, dime, and penny of their savings into the lifeline of New York City? No, most of them are these mindless hipsters from Iowa where there are more pigs than people, or Idaho where there are more potatoes than people, and they walk around, oh, Instagram me, Black Lives Matter, hey! Wayward generation. They never went through what we went through in the 70s, the 80s, and the early 90s. So this is how to remedy it. We got to convince everybody, improve, don't move. Because, hey, half this crowd may not be here by 2021. Let's be honest. You're already thinking of moving, right? Come on. Hey, come on. You've already had the conversations. You've already gone online to say, oh, look at what I get in South Carolina. I get a palazzo, I get a mansion. And it's for 1/5 of what I pay here in New York City. And what do I get? Bupkis, I get a box, right? All right, let's be honest. And your family and friends and associates are starting to say the same thing. So my job is I got to convince everyone, hey, hold, stop. Improve, don't move. We went through this before. They burnt down the Bronx. They burnt down part of Brooklyn. Gangs controlled whole sections of the city. We had corrupt politicians. We were on the brink of fiscal bankruptcy. We had fiscal controls. We didn't have cops. We didn't have firefighters. We didn't have teachers. We didn't have social workers. Somehow we survived that, and we will survive this too. But you got to be out there and be a champion for the hard-working middle class, the lower middle class, the people who are out there trying to earn a nickel, dime, and penny and raise their families. And you got to fight for what you know is right. Woo! But unlike other Republicans, you got to go in the projects. Republicans don't go into projects, you know that. They basically write off that vote. We ain't going to get nothing but grief there. Yeah, I'll get grief, but I'll get votes. You go into the tenements. You go into the Hispanic neighborhoods.
That's right.
Yeah, even though I don't speak Spanish and they're not going to know a damn thing I'm talking about because I'm speaking English, some of them are going to understand, hey, this guy has huevos. This guy is El Jefe. And then you got to go for the gays and the lesbians and the transgenders. You can't write off that vote. You can't say, oh, well, no.
Juliet.
Because then you're just sacrificing that vote to the Democrats. And you got to go for those hipsters and millennials because when they register, a lot of them are not registering as Democrats. Go down to the Board of Elections. You see, they're registering as independents. Right. They can be won over. But if you don't go out into the streets and fight for every vote and argue and sometimes pour blood into the streets, then it's a typical Republican nowadays. When you look at the demographics, you raise a lot of money because you get wine, dine, and pocket line. They'll give you a lot of money up in the suites, and you get 30% of the vote. Is 30% of the vote going to win the mayoralty the next time? Absolutely not. So if you want to win, if you want to battle, if you want to fight for the soul of the city, if you want to be like Curtis Lee, who says, I'm a son of this city, and I will not surrender, I will not retreat, and when everybody comes to you and says, oh, vote for me, you know, they send you the lid, they got fancy TV commercials, all of a sudden you got Republicans coming out of the woodwork you haven't seen in a month of Sundays. Say, no. I know where Curtis Lewa is. He's been there 41 years in these streets fighting for people who sometimes spit in his face and want to kill him. Want to kill him as a result of what he stands for. But everybody knows I have street cred. One thing I can guarantee you, average, everyday, hardworking people are going to be equal to the rich, the privileged, and those who are spending their days now during the pandemic in the Hamptons. I know who's here, and I know who's not here. And Curtis Lewa is the son of the soil. They'll bury me here in a cardboard box at this rate in Potter's Field. But this is my city, do or die. Thank you.
Yeah.
Curtis. Well, I'd like to say we're going to make a hell of a team. We're going to fight. We're going to fight. We need you to fight. We need to take back this city. It starts at the top with Curtis Lewa. We move down the ladder. The city council is just as important. The mayor makes administrative decisions. The city council gets to vote. We're in this hot water, not just because of de Blasio, who's a communist, but we're in this hot water because of city councilmen like Paul Vallone. And that's the seat I'm running for. So together, like I said, like Curtis said, when I bleed New York. I've lived here for 65 years. I'm not going anywhere. And neither is Curtis. Let's give it up for Curtis Lewa, the next mayor of the city of New York. People's candidate, I should say.
There it is.
All right, if everybody sits down, Curtis is going to take some questions. I'm sure you all have some. All right, I can't see you all so well because of the spotlight. Eddie, who's got a question? Raise your hand.
Over here.
Okay, we'll start with Rabbi and then we'll go over there. Rabbi, go ahead.
This is what I got to get out of the way because people talk about it. I love you, Curtis. A lot of my friends, constituents, they love you. Are you going to step away from your radio show to run from there?
Well, I'll have no choice at a certain point. I figure probably January of the new coming year, I'll have to make a choice. And the choice is obviously, if you're running for mayor, your opposition, your opponents are not going to permit you to continue to broadcast. So I'll have to continue to earn an income while running for office. And definitely am working on that expeditiously as we speak. It's a long road, though, to here. There'll probably be some Republican opponents along the way. And naturally, we see there's a whole host of Democrats who are jostling for their Democratic primary nomination.